Recap: the path that judged them, 3 feet of water, and Shane Falco's very bad day. The expedition into the wizard's domain continued with Bartleby, Basil, Ildrex, Momo, Scion, Shane, and Tolver pressing deeper into the ancient halls. After everything they had already endured, they approached each new door with the confidence of experienced dungeon explorers, which meant they expected poison, curses, undead, collapsing ceilings, or all four at once. Basil stopped before a locked door and went to work. After a few careful movements of his thieves' tools, the lock surrendered with a satisfying click. The door opened into a strangely clean, cross-shaped chamber with 4 additional doors branching away from it. The walls bore an unusual ring of green moss approximately 3 feet above the floor. That should probably have been a warning. Everyone entered and began searching. Before long, the door behind them slammed shut, then the other doors slammed shut. Heavy locks snapped into place, followed by the grinding of ancient machinery beneath the floor. Water began spilling through countless tiny cracks in the stone. At first, the party remained calm. Then the water reached their ankles, then their knees, then their waists. The chamber had become an enormous stone bathtub, and nobody could locate the drain. Weapons were raised against an enemy that could not be stabbed. Spells were prepared against water that did not care. Basil and Bartleby rushed between the doors, checking locks, hinges, and seams, while Tolver listened to the machinery grinding somewhere beneath them. Ildrex braced himself against one of the doors. Shane began looking increasingly concerned, and Scion searched for any magical influence controlling the trap. Momo hurried to the northern door and cast Knock. The lock burst open, and the door swung wide. Water rushed through the opening and flooded into the ruined chamber beyond, briefly lowering the level around the party. Momo barely had time to peer through the doorway before the ancient mechanism groaned again. The door slammed shut. The locks returned. The water began rising again. Fortunately, the machinery was nearly as old and tired as the dungeon itself. After reaching the green moss line, the water stopped at approximately 3 feet. Beneath them came a terrible clicking, coughing, and grinding noise, the sound of a mechanism desperately trying to drown them, but no longer possessing the strength to finish the job. The moss was not decoration. It was a ruler. With the immediate danger reduced from certain drowning to extremely unpleasant standing water, the party began a proper examination. Momo discovered the trap's concealed operating mechanism. Bartleby and Basil then worked together, carefully dismantling the ancient controls until the locks released and the flow of water finally stopped. The wizard's domain had attempted to drown them. Instead, it had merely soaked everyone's boots, ruined several people's mood, and given the 2 halflings a personal grudge against dungeon plumbing. The chamber's damaged mechanism, 3-foot moss line, locking doors, and flooding effect were all remnants of an ancient trap that could once have been far more lethal. Ember, the party discovered 2 small rooms connected by a crude tunnel carved directly through the dungeon's bedrock. Broken stones and fallen boulders covered the ground, while fractures spread across the walls and ceiling. This passage had not been built by the celestial architects. It had been dug by imprisoned demons seeking a way through the dungeon. The demons had escaped long ago. The tunnel they left behind looked ready to collapse on anyone foolish enough to follow them. The party crossed slowly, placing each foot with care, while loose gravel shifted beneath them. Every faint tremor sent dust falling from above. Nobody wanted to be the person whose careless step brought the entire ceiling down upon 7 adventurers. After reaching the adjoining chamber, they searched through the remains of a destroyed bed, a shattered cabinet, rotted cloth, and ancient dried herbs. The chamber had once belonged to a healer of the Gnashing Fang tribe. Most of the healer's belongings had been destroyed or stolen, but hidden beneath the debris, they recovered 2 potions of superior healing and a container of universal solvent. For once, searching an old ruined bedroom had produced something other than dust, bones, and regret. The party continued aate. They discovered a concealed stone panel. When activated, the enormous section of wall sank silently into the floor. Beyond it was light, not torchlight, not spell light. A pure, steady radiance illuminated a corridor of flawless white stone. There was no dust, no mold, no rubble, and no sign that centuries had passed. The walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to shine beneath an unseen sun. They had found the path of the righteous, an ancient celestial passage designed to prevent demons, devils, and the unrighteous from traveling through this part of the prison. The angels who once guarded the dungeon could walk through safely. Everyone else would be measured according to law, goodness, obedience, and the contents of their soul. The first chamber contained an elaborate go-ed with feathered patterns. Celestial runes upon the next door carried a simple command: open quote, leave all weapons behind, close quote. There was immediate discussion, then more discussion. Then the sort of discussion adventurers have whenever an ancient magical structure politely asks them to surrender every object they normally use to avoid death. The door could not be picked, forced, or opened with magic. It responded only when each traveler placed a weapon upon the golden rack. Once surrendered, the weapons disappeared. Ildrex trusted the command. Momo, Basil, Tolver, and Shane reluctantly followed. Bartleby and Scion did not. The halfling rogue and Yuan-Ti wizard remained behind while the others continued deeper into the white halls. The rack accepted the surrendered weapons, and the sealed door opened by itself. The next chamber bore the image of an angel with outspread wings, each with scales and a sword, the celestial symbol of order. The room immediately judged everyone who entered. Ildrex, Basil, and Momo, each lawful in nature, crossed without harm. The chamber recognized the order within them and allowed them to pass. Tolver, though good-hearted, was not bound to law in the same fashion. The magic pressed against him, testing his spirit, but because he had obeyed the command and entered without his weapon, the path treated him with greater mercy. Then Shane entered. The chamber knew exactly what Shane was. A wave of divine sickness rolled through him. His stomach twisted, his vision swam, and poison seemed to spread through his body without fang, blade, or visible source. This was not a normal trap. It was a celestial judgment, and the hall had reached its verdict quickly. Shane was not approved. Beyond lay a great meditation chamber lined with deep blue silken blankets. Though there were no beds, the blankets felt as soft as feather mattresses. The party decided that after surviving a flooding chamber, a collapsing tunnel, and magical moral inspection, a little rest seemed reasonable. The lawful members of the party discovered that the hall restored them as they rested. Wounds slowly closed, pain faded, exhaustion lifted from their limbs. Basil, Momo, and Ildrex felt the room's ordered energy strengthening them hour by hour. Tolver could rest, but the hall offered him no special reward. Shane lay down and discovered that celestial bedding could still be extremely uncomfortable when the celestial realm disapproved of nearly everything about you. Nobody touched the blankets with the intention of taking one. The room radiated the distinct feeling that stealing sacred bedding would result in an educational amount of lightning. The meditation hall was capable of restoring lawful travelers while punishing chaotic intruders and anyone attempting to steal its silken blankets. The next hall was covered with inscriptions carved into the spotless white walls. Celeste ants slated into common so that any traveler could understand it. Here, Aram had recorded the final stand of the paladins of Marunda. The party learned that Marunda, goddess of oceans, travel, and vigilance, had summoned her remaining followers into the dungeon. They had waited for years without knowing their purpose. Only moments before the imprisoned demon escaped, the goddess finally revealed the truth. The paladins had not been summoned to survive. They had been summoned to die. Their sacrifice would delay the demon long enough for a mighty angel to recognize the creature's deception and destroy it. When the prison wall broke, Marunda's followers stood their ground. One after another, they fell, willingly giving their lives so the demon could not escape into the world. Only Aram survived. The sorrow in his words remained as powerful as the day they had been carved. The hall was not merely a memorial. It was a confession written by the last witness to the deaths of an entire holy order. After paying their respects, the party entered a beautifully furnished hall containing deep blue velvet sofas. The air was peaceful, warm, and welcoming. At least, it was welcoming to some of them. Ildrex immediately felt the room's restorative power. Tolver experienced the same calm, as though the hall recognized the goodness within him. By remaining there, they could feel lingering afflictions weakening and their bodies recovering. Basil and Momo were neither helped nor harmed. The room accepted their presence but offered no blessing. Then Shane crossed the threshold. The light seemed to turn against him. His sight vanished. Every sound disappeared. The fighter stood in absolute darkness and silence while holy power tore through his body. His strength drained away as though invisible hands were pulling the life from his veins. His knees buckled, and he struck the white floor, already bloodied and dangerously close to death. Shane could not see his companions rushing toward him. He could not hear them calling his name. He could feel only the crushing certainty that the room wanted him gone. The party dragged him onward, guiding the blinded and deafened fighter through a place that regarded his presence as an infection. The hall could cure poison, disease, curses, paralysis, blindness, and deafness from those it considered good. To an evil soul, it delivered those afflictions itself and stripped away a terrifying portion of that creature's vitality. The following chamber bore another angelic carving, this one holding a lyre and raising one hand in a gesture of peace. For the good party, it was peaceful. For everyone else, it was a test of terror. Ildrex and Tolver crossed unharmed. Basil and Momo felt fear gathering around them, but held their ground through discipline and willpower. Shane entered already blind, deaf, poisoned, weakened, and thoroughly judged. The chamber struck him again. Pure fear tore through his mind. His remaining vitality collapsed under the additional celestial pressure. For several terrible moments, the party believed the path was going to kill him without ever making an attack roll. Steel and magic could defeat monsters. There was no sword to swing at a hallway that had examined Shane Falco's soul and decided it was unacceptable. Somehow, Shane survived, barely. After nearly 4 hours of careful travel, resting, healing, waiting for magical effects to fade, and repeatedly checking whether Shane was still breathing, the group reached the final weapon chamber. This one contained a magnificent silver rack decorated with delicate leaves. The weapon surrendered at the beginning of the path had reappeared upon it. Ildrex reclaimed his weapon and felt celestial energy surge through it. The paladin's lawful and good nature had been rewarded, transforming his weapon into a far more powerful instrument for the days ahead. The others recovered their weapons largely unchanged. Shane's weapon returned carrying the hall's disapproval. It felt colder, heavier, and diminished, as though even the steel had been punished for belonging to him. The party had survived the path of the righteous, although survived was doing far more work for Shane than for anyone else. The silver rack returned and empowered weapons according to the character who carried them. Lawful good wielders received a potent blessing, while the weapons of evil wielders were burdened with a temporary curse. There was still one problem. Bartleby and Scion remained on the other side. Ildrex summoned his magical steed and rode back through the radiant halls. Tien, the supposedly deadly path, was almost welcoming. The rooms that had poisoned, terrified, blinded, deafened, and nearly killed Shane treated Ildrex like an honored guest. The path of the righteous had become the Ildrex Express. The paladin made repeated journeys, collecting Bartleby and Scion and carrying them through the dangerous chambers to reunite the party. Between Ildrex's protection, the surrendered weapons, and the route already being understood, both adventurers reached the far side alive. Eventually, all seven stood together beyond the final secret passage. They had escaped the flooding chamber. They had crossed the demon-dug tunnel. They had recovered powerful healing supplies. They had learned the truth of Marunda's fallen paladins. They had gained celestial blessings. And Shane Falco had personally discovered that certain rooms could inflict more damage than most monsters while remaining perfectly clean and beautifully furnished. Yet their greatest concern remained ahead of them. The survivors were still behind. If the party intended to bring everyone through this route, then the path of the righteous would have to judge each survivor in turn. Weapons would need to be surrendered. The lawful might be restored. The good might be cleansed. Others might be poisoned, terrified, weakened, blinded, or deafened. Someone would have to go back. Perhaps all of them would have to go back. The party had found a way forward, but transporting the survivors through it might prove far more dangerous than discovering it in the first place.